Welcome to True Crime Deep Dive. I am your host, Sherry.
I'm your host, Mark.
Let's dive into it. All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a truly dark chapter of American history, one that's often overlooked. We're talking about Atlanta, between 1911 and 1915, when an unidentified serial killer, you might have heard of him, the Atlanta Ripper, terrorized the city's African-American community.
Yeah, it's a case that really deserves more attention.
Yeah.
When you think about it, at least 15 women, and possibly many more, were murdered. Brutally murdered.
Brutally. And it's even more unsettling when you consider the context. I mean, this was Atlanta just a few years after the 1906 race riot. Racial tensions were sky high. Imagine the fear that gripped the Black community. They were already living with so much unease, and then this starts happening.
It's impossible to ignore the parallels to Jack the Ripper in London, too. Those crimes were still pretty fresh in everyone's mind, so you can imagine how that would have amplified the fear in Atlanta.
Absolutely. It's like this specter of violence hanging over the city. So for this deep dive, we're going to try to piece together what happened. We'll look at the victims, the timeline, the suspects, and try to understand why this killer was never caught. It's about giving this horrific period the attention it deserves.
Yeah, and I think, trying to understand why this case has been so overlooked is part of that, too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sources we've got, they offer a lot of different perspectives on this. We've got timelines, descriptions of the victims, various theories about the killer, but it's a tough case.
Oh, yeah, the historical record is so incomplete, and that in itself tells us something,
Right, like what's missing is almost as important as what's there.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's jump into this timeline. One source points to an even earlier death. 1910, a 23-year-old cook named Maggie Brooke found with a fractured skull. Could this be the first victim?
It's possible. It's different from the later killings, which mostly involved slashings, but it does show that violence against young Black women was, tragically, not uncommon.
It's like a premonition almost, right? Then comes 1911, and this is where things really take a turn.
Yeah, 1911 was a bloodbath.
In May, an unidentified woman, throat slashed, found near Decatur Street. June, Mary Putnam, she was a laundress, stabbed near the railroad tracks. And then July, Minnie Chapman nearly decapitated in her own home.
Nearly decapitated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a level of brutality that just sticks with you. And that detail about the precision of the cuts, it comes up again and again with these murders.
It does. And August of that same year, it doesn't let up. The woman in the woods, unidentified, mutilated, hands and feet missing. A few days later, Ella Hill, her throat cut, found in an alley. Then, September, Martha Smith stabbed more than 20 times, her heart punctured.
It's just relentless, the fear in the community must have been palpable.
Oh, I can't even imagine. And newspapers at the time started using the name Black Ripper, clearly drawing a comparison to Jack the Ripper, but also, I think, reflecting the terror that was gripping the Black community.
Absolutely. And it's a name that sticks, unfortunately. But, even with all those names we just mentioned, between October and December of 1911, there were reportedly 3 more women killed. Their names lost to history.
It's heartbreaking, that their names aren't even remembered.
It's a symptom of a much bigger problem. The way Black lives were treated, the lack of care in recording their stories, it's awful.
It is. It's a reminder of how much we still need to learn from the past. The 1912 rolls around and it seems like things quiet down, but maybe not. Maybe some of the killings were attributed to other causes.
Right, maybe the Ripper's methods changed, or maybe people just weren't looking for the connections anymore. In the spring of 12, you've got Lena Sharp. She was found with a slashed throat, initially ruled a suicide, but there were people who contested that.
Oh yeah, her daughter, Emma Lou, she claimed to have seen a tall, thin Black man talking to her mother just before the attack.
Eyewitness testimony, even in the best of circumstances, can be tricky, but in this case, you have to wonder if the initial ruling of suicide was influenced by, racial biases.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Then summer of 12, 2 more unnamed victims, similar throat wounds, but the police chalked it up to gang violence.
Gang violence, like it was just some random act that makes you question how seriously they were taking these murders.
Absolutely. And as if this whole situation wasn't bad enough, you have the lynching of Bloody Will Cato that same year. He was killed for a completely different crime, but some newspapers tried to pin the Ripper murders on him.
Even after he was dead, they were trying to make him the scapegoat.
It's just another example of how misinformation and racial prejudice clouded the whole investigation. From 1913 to 1915, the killings become more sporadic. One confirmed Ripper-style murder in 1913, victim unidentified. Then 2 more attacks in 1914 and 15. Could be copycats, could be the Ripper resurfacing.
It's possible. Serial killers often have cooling-off periods. Plus, with all the attention on the Atlanta Ripper, it wouldn't be surprising if someone was inspired to copy him.
It's terrifying to think about, and this is where it gets even more chilling. One of our sources says that for over 10 years after this, until 1924, bodies of black women were still being found with similar wounds. And there's the case of Laura Blackwell in 1917, killed with an axe, throat slashed. John Brown was convicted, but investigators suspected him in other similar deaths of black women.
Yeah, it paints a picture of a broader pattern of violence against black women that may have gone on for years, overlapping with the Ripper's crimes.
It's a really dark period in Atlanta's history. So let's try to break down the victim profile and the killer's methods. Who was he targeting and how?
The victims were almost always poor black women, many of them sex workers or in low-paying jobs, and they were vulnerable.
They were. And the killings themselves. Stabbing, slashing, mutilation. Some of the victims nearly decapitated. It seems like a sharp blade was the weapon of choice, maybe a straight razor or a knife. And that throat slashing, it's almost like a signature.
It is. It's a very specific detail that appears in almost all the cases. And it's not just the slashing, it's the precision of it. Like in the report about Mary Cates, they said the killer had some anatomical knowledge.
Anatomical knowledge, that's chilling.
It's very unsettling. And then you've got the locations. Alleys, railroad tracks, abandoned buildings. These were places where the killer could operate unseen.
And the fact that some victims were found partially undressed, it suggests a possible sexual motive, but that was rarely confirmed.
Yeah, the investigations, as we've said, weren't exactly thorough.
Right. Okay, so let's talk theories and suspects. One of the main ones is the well-dressed black gentleman.
All right, this comes from witness descriptions. They described a taller, lighter-skinned black man, dressed in nice clothes. He was seen around the areas where the victims were found, sometimes offering them money or work.
So theories are he was a gambler, a pimp, maybe connected to brothel owners, or even more disturbing, someone trying to clean up the community by targeting sex workers.
There's a lot of speculation, though. There's no real evidence to connect anyone to these descriptions.
Yeah, just a lot of whispers and rumors. Then there's the theory about a white medical professional.
This one comes from the precision of the cuts. You know, that surgical precision we talked about. And there were rumors of a white doctor or medical student seen near some of the crime scenes. But again, no real investigation into this.
Right, and the possible motives there are even more disturbing. Racist experimentation on black bodies or just plain psychopathy.
And again, it really highlights the racial bias of the time. The possibility of a white killer targeting black victims didn't seem to be on their radar at all.
We've already mentioned Bloody Will Cato, the man who was lynched, and the fact that some tried to pin the Ripper murders on him. It's clear that was just a desperate attempt to find a scapegoat.
Yeah, it was a complete fabrication. They just needed someone to blame.
Then there's the policeman theory, the idea that a corrupt white officer was involved.
This is a bit more out there, but, you know, the fact that some of the bodies were found so quickly suggests the killer knew the patrol routes. Plus, there's the issue of all those missing case files. Makes you wonder if someone was trying to cover something up.
Yeah, and while it's unlikely, you can't completely dismiss it given the history of police corruption, especially back then.
It speaks to a real lack of trust between the black community and the police.
Absolutely. And then there's the theory of multiple killers. The timeline's a bit inconsistent, some of the wounds are different. Could there have been copycats or even unrelated murders lumped in with the Ripper cases?
It's possible. The atmosphere of fear that the Ripper created might have emboldened others to commit similar crimes.
Or it might have just been a convenient way to dismiss violence against black women. But that signature throat slashing, it does point to a single killer in most of the cases.
Yeah, that's the detail that connects most of these murders.
So the big question, with all of this considered, why was the killer or killers never caught?
Well, a lot of it comes down to police apathy, plain and simple.
The victims were poor, they were black, their lives didn't matter as much to the authorities.
Exactly. And the fact that a black freelance detective, Louis Lorenzo, was basically ignored when he tried to investigate, that says a lot.
And the way evidence was handled or mishandled is just shocking. Lost files, missing reports, even victims' names forgotten.
It's disgraceful. It shows a complete lack of respect for the victims and their families.
And the media, while they covered the killings, they often sensationalized them, turning the Ripper into this mythical boogeyman.
It sold newspapers, but it didn't help with the investigation. It might have even hindered it by creating more fear and confusion.
We also can't ignore the racial bias in policing at the time.
Yeah, a police force that's mostly white is less likely to take seriously the concerns of the black community.
And they certainly weren't going to put a lot of resources into investigating the murders of black women.
It's just a fact.
And we have to remember that forensic science was in its infancy back then. No DNA testing, no fingerprinting, no profiling. They were working with very limited tools.
Which makes solving a case like this even more difficult.
Absolutely. And then there's the always lingering question of a cover-up. Was someone powerful being protected?
We don't have any proof, but the lack of investigation into certain aspects of the case, it does make you wonder.
It does. Okay, so could the Ripper have been identified later? There are some potentially linked cases in Macon, Georgia in the 1920s, and even some comparisons to the Axeman of New Orleans, but those are pretty weak connections.
Yeah, the Axeman's MO is completely different. And the lack of physical evidence from the Atlanta Ripper cases means we can't do any modern DNA testing. Those avenues are closed.
So we're left with theories and speculation.
That's basically it.
So, to wrap this up, why do you think the killing stopped around 1915?
Well, there are a few possibilities. The killer could have died, maybe in an accident or from natural causes, or maybe they were arrested for something else and ended up in prison. Or, and this is a chilling thought, maybe they just moved to another city. We know there were similar murders in Memphis and Birmingham around that time.
It's disturbing to think that the Ripper might have just continued killing somewhere else.
It is.
One source points to the most likely suspect being a black man with some medical knowledge. Maybe someone who worked in a mortuary or a veteran.
Someone who could blend in and who had the anatomical knowledge to explain those precise cuts.
It's a theory, but it's important to remember that it's just a theory.
We don't have the evidence to say for sure.
So at the end of the day, the case of the Atlanta Ripper remains unsolved. It's one of America's first known serial killing sprees, but it's a case that's been largely forgotten.
And that's a shame because it tells us so much about the times, about the racial injustices of the Jim Crow era.
It shows how black lives were devalued, how their stories were ignored.
It's a reminder that we can't just forget about these things, that we need to keep talking about them, keep learning from them.
Absolutely. The Atlanta Ripper case is a tragedy, but is also a call to action. It forces us to ask, what can we do to ensure that this kind of injustice never happens again?
And it makes you wonder, how many other cases are out there? How many stories have been lost or forgotten because the victims were the wrong race, the wrong class, the wrong gender?
It's a sobering thought. And it's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to seek justice, to speak up for those who have been silenced, and to ensure that all victims are remembered and honored.
That's the only way we can truly learn from the past and create a more just future.
Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been heavy, but it's been important, and we'll keep diving into these forgotten stories, keep shining a light on the dark corners of history. Until next time.
Absolutely, we'll be back. New episodes are going to be released every Tuesday and Friday.
Simple but essential.
Simple but essential information for staying up to date.
Foundational piece of knowledge.
You got it. And with that knowledge, you can engage with our content on your own terms, on your own schedule.
That's the beauty of it.
That's right. So with that in mind, think about this now that you know exactly when to tune in.
Think about the future.
What burning questions do you have out there?
Yeah, what topics are you hoping we'll explore in future deep dives?
What sources are just sitting in your archives, just waiting to be unpacked?
We're ready.
Waiting to have their secrets revealed.
Send them our way.
Send them our way. We're always ready for our next dive.
Always.
Guided by your curiosity.
Yeah.
So until then, keep diving.
Happy listening.
And we'll see you soon.
See you next time.
Take care.
Bye.